Hey folks, in this video we're going to be taking a look at the depth of field settings on both the in-game Spectator camera and the Hattiwatti cinematic tools for Battlefield 1. Hopefully I'll be able to give you a better understanding of what each setting does and how it can be best applied to your screenshots and cinematics. Let's take a look at this scout running along the train tracks on Argonne Forest. The shot is set up so that the hero is in focus, and both in front and behind him we have a graduating depth of field effect so that it's out of focus close to the camera, in focus on our hero, and drops out of focus again behind him and into the distance. For demonstration purposes, note that the strength of the blur effect here is much greater than is probably ideal, so that you can see what's going on a bit more easily. The important thing to appreciate is that, as you would get with a real camera, we want the depth of field effect to be applied as smoothly and as naturally as possible. Let's take a look outside of the camera at the shot from the side and see what's going on with the settings. Here's our hero again in the middle of the scene with our camera to the front of him. It's out of focus at the camera. There's a gradual decrease in blur until we get to our in focus scout, and then the blur increases behind him the further away we get. Let's look now at the terminology used within the spectator mode and the cinematic tools to apply these settings. Focus distance is fairly self-explanatory, being the distance from the camera to the subject you want to be in focus. In our case, the scout was 10 units away from the camera. Next we have our near and far settings, and this tends to be where people get confused. The crucial point to note is that while focus distance is relative to the camera position, near and far values relate to the focus point itself. Here are the numbers we're using to put that into context. Focus point is 10, but for all intents and purposes this now becomes our 0 point for near and far values, which will now be calculated from that point. So for near depth of field, as we want maximum blur to be closest to the camera, we can set near end to 10 because that's how far away our focus distance is. Near start, which you can think of as being the start of the blur effect or where it's the least blurry, we can either set to 0 for a narrow depth of field, or in this case 1 to give ourselves a bit more in focus area to play with. Similarly, behind our character, we're going to want to start the blur again at its lowest value by setting far start to 1 and far end to 20, for example. Although for a smoother graduation into an out of focus background, you could push this even further back. The nice thing about this setup is that now if you want to change the part of the image that's in focus, you only need to change the focus point value, and because the other effect settings are relative to that, you'll always have a nice natural looking graduated depth of field effect. That's it from me. I hope that helped a little bit. Bye for now.